Before we get into this podcast, I want to give a huge thank you to our production team over at Hire, spelled Hyre, formerly known as Hey Lou. Yep, they rebranded. Go check out HYREUP.com. That's hireup.com to find an amazing A-plus rockstar talent VA like the ones who produce this podcast and actually serve as moving consultants at Two College Brothers.
So I think culture matters because it impacts every facet of the business, seen and unseen, from customer experience to employee growth in an organization, to investor relationships, to management and their career growth, how team meetings, if they occur at all, how they occur, how the board relates to the company, and go every which way possible. But history plays a role in culture, because if we don't know where we come from, how do we clarify our values, and where we come from can help us understand where we're going. Soren Kierkegaard said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forward." So I looked some research like, where does this industry come from? And it looks like it started at the early settlers, and how ultimately it was like do it yourself. People figured it out. It's interesting, like the core values of the original settlers of our nation, like they just like figured out how to move themselves. Core values have tremendous utility when they're used as feedback loops, when they're used as the foundation for marketing, when they're used in conversation, when they're in the team meetings. When my team can say to me, "Hey, you're not being direct with the customer right now," and this is the core value. The values transcend the hierarchy of power. Now I could say, I could be corrupted by power and say, "Get the heck out of here. I don't want to hear right now." And that's going to happen. And this is why.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. I'm your host, Wade Schweikel, founder of Two College Brothers Moving Storage and Franchising, as well as the co-founder of the Titan Retreats and Tighten Up Training. And today's guest is somebody that I had the privilege of recently going on to his podcast. We've got Jay Doran. He is the host of the Culture Matters podcast. We had a great time on that last week, Jay. And you also have an agency, a consulting firm called Culture Matters that you're the founder of, and you're the author of 30 Days of Thought. And it's the book right over my shoulder that you can see next to Hometown Titan. And thank you for coming on the podcast. I understand you're working on a new book, but I'm curious to hear, what's your story? How did you get into the consulting business? How did you start your podcast? What's the big deal about culture and what brought you here today?
Thank you again for the opportunity. I was saying to you offline about that. I have a quote before every episode, and shout out to yours, episode 967 of the Culture Matters podcast. I usually like to share a quote before, so I have one for today. "He who must learn to fly one day must first learn to walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying." Nietzsche said that, but I want to add a little anecdote. One cannot move into moving. The culture, I believe that culture matters for businesses. I had that epiphany many years ago when I was leading a team meeting, and it hit me that the core values were more than just words on a wall, but a way to actually teach the team how to show up in the best interest of the customer. So in the spirit of this conversation, and the moving industry and the impact that has on people, our family included, since we just moved, not just 2 years ago, and that was a seamless process that lowered anxiety quite a bit. I'm honored to have this opportunity to talk about moving culture on your show. So I think culture matters because it impacts every facet of the business, seen and unseen, from customer experience to employee growth in an organization, to investor relationships, to management and their career growth, how team meetings, if they occur at all, how they occur, how the board relates to the company, and go every which way possible. But
love that. So why does culture matter? What's the big deal about culture?
When I started the company, I really thought I knew the answer to that. And that had to do with what I just said about values and behaviors and customer service and employee engagement. and employee career development, all these things that are true. And the more that I've studied culture, whether it's company culture or countries or religious sects or all sorts of different interesting cultural phenomenon, I think it comes down to people, relationships, how we work together, how we serve together. And then the question becomes, how do you actually build a business that's not only successful from a profit standpoint, but from a meaning standpoint and from a purpose standpoint? And when we use these words, they become they're almost like too heady. Right? They become like almost too intellectual. It's like, what's the brass tacks of it? Well, we all know when the culture is off in our business, whether we're working for a company, we're a customer of a business, and the person that was receiving us on the other end, that employee who has their own story, who has their own life, wasn't at the highest level of customer service to us. That experience just didn't feel right. There's like almost like a pit in our stomach, and we're like, and now whatever we were doing before that relation with that employee, with that business, is now impacted negatively versus positively. Some of us that are entrepreneurs that are listening to this, we can't quite put a pin on it, but something's off, and it's like we could just feel it, and we're just not quite fully sure. So I think culture is important to even pay attention to, because it's about the relationships and there are many relationships as it relates to a business. There are customer relationships, there are employee to employer relationships, there are management to founder relationships, there are chief executive officer to board relationships, and culture is all of the invisible threads. Nietzsche said, the strongest invisible threads are the strongest ties. So what scales the value system, the values, the belief, the purpose, the goal, the vision, the excitement, the energy from the founder when it started to something that's been around for 70 years that still provides value to customers? Is that energy still there? Is that intensity still there? In some case studies, it is. And in many, countless case studies, it isn't. The company is out of business. It long ago didn't innovate. It was bought out because it was vulnerable at a period of time, and someone else was able to profit from its vulnerability and its lack of belief, purpose, goal, vision, mission. So I can, go every which way with this conversation, but ultimately, this is about making money. I don't want to get wrong at all, but it's how we make money that reveals the values of our culture. It's how we work together that reveals the values of our culture. It's how we create opportunities for our employees. It's how we plan and strategize. It's how we show up to work. And that's like the world I live in, studying corporate culture. Business, right? Business management, business consulting. They're all intermeshed in that like pool of the healers, the helpers, the servants of small, medium-sized enterprises, however big you want to go. Culture is the subject matter expertise that I found very fascinating and interesting, which is like that's been the core focus. Like what makes a great culture and what makes a bad culture.
What does make a good culture and a bad culture? Like what is there a right or a wrong culture for a business? I mean,
I guess that depends who asks, right? Because the question would become let's say that, that's a deep question. It's like, does Kim Jong-un ask that question? I don't know. I'd love that case. That's the guy that runs North Korea. So
right,
it's for who?
Right.
For the people or for the king? Now, there are deep philosophical quandaries around that we, maybe I'll digress. That's for another show, maybe like a Peterson or one of these public intellectuals. But I'll say, in a very business sense. It's for the people that started a moving company that maybe follow your show and they're trying to figure out why their people aren't showing up to work. Well, how did you hire? How many questions did you ask? Did you even do it yourself? What were the questions? What degree of stress or duress were you under when you even had the interview? Did you are you the type in the season of your entrepreneurial journey where you're hiring fast and firing slow? Do you avoid conflict? Is it hard to have tougher conversations? Why or why not? How strong is your management team? Or how about you're the employee in the conversation? Um, Rule 5 and Beyond Order, Peterson's third book. Do not do what you hate. The company that you work for, you don't know why you're still there. It's providing food on the table. Things are happening that are don't seem to be involving you. You're not sure how your life goals or your aims are fitting into your organization. You aren't saying anything and your company's not asking. There aren't customer surveys, or there are customer surveys and you fill it out anonymously, but when it's brought up to the main meeting, there's there's just a lot of rationalization around the feedback, and there aren't things that are actually getting done to make changes for the organization to be better. And you're still, and so you've checked out. Now your side hustle becomes the main hustle, whereas once you were like the top dog in the organization, fully bought in, fully engulfed or enraptured in the organization, and now you want to just go do something else. Or maybe I've learned so much from my company, let me just go start my own company and I could compete with the company that I normally that I was originally so bought into. But things have just changed. Here's the thing.
I want to give a huge thank you to the team that produces this podcast, and that's the team over at Hire. Now, who's Hire? You probably know them as Hey Lou. Well, Hey Lou has recently rebranded to Hire, Hyre, and their new website is hireup.com, HYREUP.com, and they've been fantastic to work with. It's the same owners, the same management. They're still doing an amazing job in sourcing amazing VAs. We use them from everything from administrative work to KPIs. They can help with emails. They're basically your assistant, your virtual assistant, and they live all over the world. They come from South America, Central America, Asia, anywhere where there's remote people willing to work, and the cost of living over there is a lot less. So you can save a lot of money as a business owner getting them and working with them to do tasks you used to have to pay in-office employees, and we all know how much of a hassle that can be. So if you're looking to get a VA like we use them for, we actually use them for sales. We have moving consultants that are VAs. They're perfect English-speaking people, extremely intelligent and hardworking. You won't regret working with Hire to find your next rock star A+ talent. So go check out HYREUP.com and tell them I sent you.
There's because it's constant. Life is constant change. Things are constantly in flux. People change, the context changes based on the results. Like success undermines itself. So there's a story in every side, and part of management's job is to figure out, who are we as an organization? Where are we going? Why are we going there? How do we think we're getting there? And how are we going to communicate that to our people so that they get it and that they have the best possible chance to like be a part of it and to be all in? And then at the same time, there's going to be people that are absolutely going to take advantage, are absolutely not going to give it all or be all they can be for whatever reason. They might have a million great reasons. And so that creates that natural tension where, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But so I digress a little bit, but I guess in the moving context, right? I did research because I wanted to be as helpful as possible, like on the show. So it's interesting, like so history, right? History plays a role in culture, because if we don't know where we come from, how do we clarify our values? And where we come from can help us understand where we're going. Soren Kierkegaard said, life can only be understood backwards, but must be lived forward. So I looked some research, like, where does this industry come from? And it looks like, it started at the early settlers, and how ultimately it was like do it yourself. People figured it out. It's interesting, like the core values of the original settlers of our nation, like they just like figured out how to move themselves. But as society continued to evolve, like I say, we become less and less like super independent and more and more codependent. People started relying on their neighbors to support them in these endeavors. Then, and eventually, strangers would actually help them get all their stuff and move their stuff across state lines. Statistically, it says that I remember from memory, but it was 75% of people that move interstate will choose a moving service. Now, of the 41 million rough people that moved in 2023, 18 and a half or so percent of them moved like far enough away where that would line up. So it was like 7.7 million. So roughly 20% of that 7.7 million, which should be 1,540,000 or something like that. Yeah, right. 20% of that 7.7 million moved across state lines. Roughly 20% of them. Wait, I just got lost in my own thoughts there. 7.7 million moved across state lines. Oh, 75% of those people. So it's much greater. It's much greater. Over 5 million people would have, be choosing like a moving service. So they're relying that, yeah, that's why I got confused. They're relying on third party. They're relying on strangers. And I learned this from your podcast, that moving is the third most scary or anxiety creating activity. Death was up there and something else that I don't recall.
Divorce. Yeah. Third most stressful time for the average person behind death and divorce.
Yeah. So there are 5 million people roughly in that year that were going across state lines that are likely going to choose a stranger to help them navigate one of the most anxiety creating activities in their life. And we're already in a society where people don't even like each other. So, and it said the busiest time in the industry was between May and August.
Yeah,
so
we're right in the thick of it.
Wait, so now I'm thinking the type of person that either has to work during that time because they don't have options, depending on their background, education, environment, like the life, that the journey that they're in, or they have to, right? They have to do it. That's like going to create even more of a pressure cooker psychologically for conflict to occur. Like because May to August is when I would go, for my culture, with my family, go away on a vacation. If everyone in the culture is going away, right, that's the time. But that's where 60% of the work is done. Well, then who are we actually even employing? Those are people that might need culture, like leadership, like training, like hope, reliability from the company to them, like dependability and honesty, and like to be treated with respect and dignity, because that makes me think, what background are they coming from statistically? Now, where they have to do that job. They might need an employer to treat them with respect, treat them with dignity, be there to support them, give them hope, give them training and education. What are they supposed to show up now? And now they're going to a pressure cooker. 5 million people moving across state lines, doing the most scary, annoying thing ever. Top 3. It's bound to be in crazy amount of conflict, like miscommunication, misunderstanding. Naturally, things are going to go wrong, and as unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
That was fascinating to me, and the exciting opportunity there is, it said there was $23.3 billion dollars in market share, and only a few thousand companies, but they're all very small companies, like majority. So there's like this great entrepreneurial spirit. There's an entrepreneurial spirit. There's clearly a need, because if 60% of the business, if 20% of all the moves move across state lines, and 75% of those um, actively choose a moving partner. There's a lot of, I'm just going that minority, right? That 5 million. That's a lot of stress and angst that I guess the opportunity in that is, if I'm a mover listening to this and I'm really do a great job with customer service. Oh, the average person looked at 4 companies, 4 quotes per choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think the trust would be low normally from the culture to the business. I'm sorry, the consumer to the business. The trust would be low because nobody wants to move. I don't know you. What's your system? What's your process? This speaks to some of the things you said on the podcast about having the right like set up on your website, having people with actually, having brands on their shirt. So like trust is low. You got to be able to earn the trust, but you also have to be able to deliver at such a high level of customer service. It's clearly a high values industry where values really matter, but the bar is so low, the likelihood of people having the values is extremely low based on when the business is occurring, the majority of it, and the types of hostility, because the customer is always right, which is not true, but we have to act that way in the West. The customer is not always right because people are, could be jerks.
I'd say about 93% of the time the customer's right.
So that's 7%. I'd like to, how we relate to that 7% will reveal our core values. Do we actually believe in respect? Do we actually believe in honesty? Do we actually believe in add whatever? Because that 7% is where, at the end of the day, we're getting paid. So we have to like be professional. That 7% is where the culture is proven. I keep going. I got really excited about the industry when I was preparing because like moving is about culture. I mean, anyway, we can go any direction, but just so the audience can kind of get like an understanding of me. My job is to get inside of everything, to listen, which is hard to learn that from this conversation. I have to go to the podcast, listen to the interviews, and just try to figure out what are the core values actually of the organization, not just what's written, but what's happening. What's the story that's driving the organization or stories? How are the meetings? Do they occur? How do they occur? What's the aim? Like, where is the business going? Like, you're a beast. You have a vision. You have a mission. You have so many leaders attracting to you. You like Wade. You're one of those special. Was we could talk about the hero figures. There's that generation. There are people in each industry in a certain generation that kind of it goes to the top, like it trickles up to the top.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, I mean, it is a people-driven business. I mean, we're dealing with those people that are having the third most stressful time of their lives multiple times a day. Depending on the size of your company, if you're just starting out, maybe it's one person every other day. Maybe it's a person a day. The bigger you get, it could be a dozen people a day. It could be 4 dozen people a day that you're moving during one of the most stressful times of their life. And then you're talking to even more people leading up to that day as they get booked, and you're quoting people. You're one of those 4 companies. And that's just on the customer, business to customer side. But then when you look internally, our inventory is our people. Like some businesses, you have an inventory of products on a shelf in a warehouse somewhere. But in our business, we're only able to take on as many moves as we have enough good people for, that are capable of taking on those moves, that are trained, that are vetted, that are hired, that are, part of your team. And so there's so many different dynamics. And I don't know if I learned this from you or somebody else, but the different interactions grow exponentially. Whereas like 2 people, you just have you have basically one dynamic from one person and one dynamic from the other person. But as you get to 3 people, as you get to 4 people, as you get to 10 people, it basically creates like thousands of combinations and permutations. And that, companies that have several dozen employees and deal with several different dozen customers a day, I mean, you can potentially do the math, and my math skills are slipping me right now, but there's so many different personal interrelational dynamics. And I think ultimately the only way to handle all of that is to have some sort of a culture. And, whether you set the direction of your culture or not, there's going to be a culture that exists. And I guess, tell me about
That's an interesting point.
what can a business owner, what can a moving company owner do to influence and set that direction of the culture in the most popular, or, in the most positive way possible?
Oh, they have to do what you do, which is get educated. That's surrounding
Mm.
yourself by people that can push you. But you said it on the show on episode 769. They're the people you said 33% of people below us were lifting up, 33% of people at our side that were, going forward together, and 33% of our people that are lifting us up. They have to get educated, and education comes in many forms: book learning, audible learning, having coaches, having advisors, having mentors. Those are all different contexts of those above pulling us up, having mentees, those that we can give towards, having peer groups like I believe it's called the Titan retreats, is a form of education to actually pull energy together and transfer values, even if it's not through their words, it's just through presence and physicality and looking up to the stage and looking down to the audience. It's your book, Hometown Titan, reading that, listening to that, taking action on those things. The person, remember, my core subject matter expertise, like my life is dedicated to working with founders and management teams. Like the founder to CEO journey is a core interest of my own. And it's education. It's who's on that bench inside the company and outside the company. It might be invisible to the company. That's going to level up the business constantly and perpetually. But you said something that I think is really important if there's moving entrepreneurs listening to this, you just laid out the framework. Who are your people? It's where are you getting them from and how are you training them? Now, if there's a owner listening to this that is in a phase where there was a point early in their career where they picked things up and they put it down. They had to live the core values of moving quite literally when they were serving customers. It forces values. To serve forces values. They're no longer words, they're activities. You talked about the relationship or the relating, because you asked me earlier about what's culture. It's relationships. So they relate to one another, right? I'm relating to my customer. That's acting out the values. A business owner that's listening to this that might have a bunch of trucks now and a bunch of people, they may not be living them like they once did. Not because they're bad or they're trying to be Kim Jong-un. Sorry, Kim. Oh my God. I hope that doesn't get somebody sent to my house or something. I didn't think of that. Anyway, I'm not that important. So the question becomes, how do you fall back in love with your business? Because naturally, like any relationship, we can fall out of love with it. That's where the communities come in. That's where the mentors come in. That's where getting the information comes in. That's where a commitment to your vision comes in. Now, not everybody has a vision like Wade Sweikel, but they have a vision, even if it's just like in their stomach. Maybe in the beginning when they started, they just didn't want to be broke. Maybe in the beginning when they started, they actually liked like serving that family. They enjoyed the physicality. It could be, I could think about somebody that maybe that was their way of exercise at one point. Believe it or not, I worked for a moving company once. Like I was a bodybuilder in my early adolescence, and that was like the hardest thing ever, and I sucked at it. Like I'm philosophically inclined. I wasn't. I'm better at reading books and studying and being like I. Oh my God, it's hard work, and it's work to be proud of, and it takes teamwork, and it takes thoughtfulness, and it takes attention to detail, and it takes all these wonderful like Judeo-Christian, Western values, core values that like undergird our whole society. It takes all this stuff. So I just like to acknowledge that. But you said it. Who are your people? Where are you? And so, the people are the trade, right? So the business could go up like crazy. I have a moving company. I have so many people that want to work with me, but who do I have showing up to the customer? Where am I getting these people and how am I training them? That's going to reveal the culture. It sounds like in your business that it's very human capital dependent. What's their background? How do we train them? How do we teach them the core values? what systems and processes take them from maybe like, here, like a 6 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. And that delta of 2 is like astronomically huge from a customer service standpoint. It sounds like a business that I love your input on this. Like, what's the average moving company? Is it, because I just did the math on the calculator about, what's the market share, which was 23 billion, and how many moving companies are there? And it said 7,000. I don't know if that's true or not. And it said
It's roughly, yeah, that's a rough estimate. Yeah.
So like the average company would be 3 million. Now, number one, that's not true. That's an average. It's not true. 3 million is that's a real enterprise. What's the anecdotal answer to that? Like, is it like, 5,000 Bob and Marys that are just, or, Bob front office, Mary back office? I'm being a bit biased, like working, fielding calls and have a couple people showing up and they're doing X amount of moves. It's got to be, I would think, much smaller operations, the majority of these moving companies.
I want to take a second and tell you all about Tighten Up Training. As a co-founder, we've spent months and months and months and a lot of money pooling together resources from some of the best moving companies in the world. And we're excited to bring this to an online platform available to any mover to use at an affordable price. Tighten Up Training has over 200 videos, including mover training, your highest turnover position, so that you can reduce claims, streamline operations, give your team the tools to perform at the highest level of service that generate repeat and referral business and allow you to charge higher prices, as well as sales training, marketing training, business development, leadership. We're adding more content as we speak. We've got legal training in there. We've even got door-to-door training for the moving industry, thanks to Lenny Gray at the Moving Titan Retreat. We've seen a massive explosion of moving companies jumping on to Tighten Up Training since the last retreat, and people are loving it. And when you sign up and mention this podcast, we're going to give you a free 6-week onboarding course in order to learn how to hold your team accountable and get the entire team on the platform so that you can have the best off-season and summer season that you've ever had. Ideally, the best 2025 that you've ever had. So go to tightenuptraining.com, schedule your free demo today, and look forward to tightening up. I mean, it is a loaded question because you've got some companies, you've got some van line companies that have been around for 100 years that, they might be in the hundreds of millions in revenue. If not, there's probably a couple $billion moving companies, but very rarely do I see an independent moving company get into the 9 figures. I'd say, there are definitely some in the 8 figures, and they'll be coming to our Moving Titan retreat, several of them at least. But I would say the average company, it's a low barrier to entry, but it's a high barrier to success. And so there's a lot of people, like you said, that work for a moving company that decide to go off on their own. They get a truck, maybe they get 2 trucks, and they're off to the races. And I'd say probably on average, around the $1 million mark is probably where you see the average company, at least one that's been in business for 3 or more years. And then, you start getting into those multiple 7 figures and then 8 figures, and the number starts to go way down.
Can I speak to that for a second?
Sure.
It is inevitable that people will leave your companies. How the company relates to them teaches the core values. And there will be people that leave because they're resentful because the company's kind of fallen away from its aim, and they didn't feel listened to, and they're just, I'm going to go do my own thing. And there's also people that the company did everything, that was in a season where it's done everything, and they still want to go. And I'm saying how the company relates to them will reveal the core values. And this is the thing. It's hard to know. How do you know which is which? This is where all those feedback loops come in. The 33% below, the 33% to the side and above. Are we surrounded by a bunch of yes people, or are we surrounded by no people? Winston Churchill learned this the hard way. I learned this in a course on the Peterson Academy on leadership. Winston Churchill didn't listen to his people around him in the Darda lanes, and he lost it ended up like killing people. He had a huge failure, colossal failure, but he had learned that lesson of being surrounded by yes people. That later in his career, when he had to go up against Adolf Hitler in the Reichstag, he was surrounded by no people. He was surrounded by these direct reports that could tell him no, and that he would actually pay attention to their feedback. And he took their insights. And in that course, they talked about how there was a point where Stalin was surrounded by yes people, and then he actually became so delusional and paranoid, he went and hid away and tried to avoid all the conflict. And then his generals came and got him and like pulled him back into the thick of it, and he started listening to the experts around him. And they played that against how Adolf never did that. He would listen to all the generals, and then he was like, all right, great, we're going to do it my way anyway. And they're making a point to the power of having feedback from people around you that isn't just admiring, acknowledging, affirming. And so so it is natural that the people will leave us. And there will be those that leave us because that's their fate. And there will be those that leave us because we've changed their fate with our mismanagement. How we show up to those occurrences will reveal the value of our core values. And management, very easily, when I say management, sorry for the listeners, if you're a founder of a business with 2 employees, you're management. If you're the CEO of a company with one of these van lines with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, you're in management. You report to likely some type of board. Even if you're private, you probably report to something, or if you're public, you definitely report to a board. But like the business owners that are listening, that are like a couple employees, these 1 million and down, all they do is report to the IRS, hopefully. So that's why they got to be a part of communities. They have to have mentors and coaches. They have to, that's where it goes into like who's around their brain, right? What are they reading? That's an important piece when it comes to the core values. Core values have tremendous utility when they're used as feedback loops, when they're used as the foundation for marketing, when they're used in conversation, when they're in the team meetings. When my team can say to me, hey, you're not being direct with the customer right now, and this is the core value. The values transcend the hierarchy of power. Now I could say, I could be corrupted by power and say, get the heck out of here. I don't want to hear right now. And that's going to happen. And this is why. Human nature. I mean, you're going to make mistakes. It could happen. You feel like, oh my God, I'm listening to this podcast. This guy, Jay, like too much, it's going to happen. Like, it's likely to. The question is, all right, then what's next? So I think that's something I'd want to highlight for the audience is the value of values is how we actually show up in those conflicts. Right? And there's 2 parties we're serving. We're serving customers and we're serving our people. And as the business grows, it becomes confusing. Who am I serving? I'm serving a customer. I'm serving. And I've had, you were episode 969, hundreds of subject matter experts. One will say the customer, it all starts with the customer. And then I got a book sent to me from one of my mentors, CEOs. And the book was about the customer, the employee's always first. So I'm gonna have that author on the show. He says the employee's always first, and then I turn my chair and somebody else says, "Oh, the customer's always first," and that comes after that. And I would say, well, it depends on where the organization is in its life cycle, and it depends where the leadership is in their life cycle. And this is like going really in the weeds of like, this is why you have to listen to podcasts like this, where Wade is bringing you differing points of view, and and it's like more of a journey and a process of the employees that are listening to this that are going to move up in their organizations or start their own, the entrepreneurs that are listening to this that are going to grow their organizations or do something else. You're such a great listener, Wade. You're such a great listener. Just tell me to be, stop if I'm going snaking off.
No. You're fine. So I mean, I think at the end of the day, I like to think that happy employees make happy customers and happy customers make happy owners. But in order to have those happy employees, you have to serve them as the owner. And I feel like the job of a CEO, whether, and sometimes there's owners that aren't the CEOs, but I think the job of the CEO is to set the direction of the culture and to ultimately serve those under him so that they can go off and serve the customer. And then ultimately it creates that feedback loop. And I think it's Dave Ramsey who says, show me your bank statement and I'll show you what your values are, what your priorities are. And you look, and I talk a little bit about this in my book too. I think a lot of times these moving companies will hire, or any business owner will hire a consultant that'll help them, come up with some core values, or maybe they'll just like write down some things that they think are nice, that, they want to have as their core values. And we had done that at one point in time when I bought the Two College Brothers brand. We had core values and principles, but they weren't my own. And when I really started to get to think about it, I was like, well, how do I try to live my life? And our core values at Two College Brothers are be honest, own it, hone it, and hustle. And I like to think of myself as, trying to live my life that way. And I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody is. But it kind of sets those guide stones to be able to make difficult decisions sometimes. Are we being honest here? Are we taking ownership of the situation or the role or the job that we're in right now? Are we honing our skills, and honing in on our goals and getting better in certain skill sets? And then hustle, being the hardest working mover in the room, hardest working person in the room, hardest working owner or business, whatever manager in the market that you're, competing in. But I'm curious to hear your take on that. What are the point of having core values to influence your company and your culture and your decision making? And how is there a process that a moving company owner can go through to really find authentic core values that fit their leadership style and allow them to ultimately run their business with those cornerstones and those guide stones, to operate consistently and efficiently and ultimately achieve what their vision might come down to be?
I would, well, I'll go back earlier in my life when I actually, someone mutual relationship of ours, when I first met Brad Lee, my intention was to teach core values. And it was through working with Brad and that I actually, between Brad and my wife, Jenna, that led to the idea that I actually would be smarter to observe the company, to listen, to spend time with the operator, to see what actually happens in the organization. How do people actually behave? How do they show up? And that takes a third party to do that, to give an honest reflection, a mirror back to an organization of where the culture is at. And through that process, many things will be discovered. Now, this is the thing. Anyone that's listening to this, if they humble themselves, they can do that themselves. They can get back in the trenches. They can fall back in love with the business for a period of time. They can Sam Walton it and go to each location and measure the aisles with a measuring tape. Or one of my mentors, who the retailer, Foreman Mills, he used to go to the parking lot, he told me, and grab the trash, at the end of the parking lot and bring it to the front desk and say, what's going on? You can't do that if you're watching TikToks in Bermuda, collecting $9.99 for a subscription or whatever, or your dividend. If whoever's listening to this is the leader via title of their company, they better be there making it happen, or they'll have to pay millions to people like me to do it for them. They might have to do both because they have 700,000 employees or whatever. And I'm, arbitrary number. It could feel like millions, even if it's like your last big check or whatever. if you're a small company, to have a third party do it. This is not an argument for having third parties or doing it yourself. It's each individual has to decide where they're at in their hero's journey. But I originally started my career thinking I was going to teach the concepts around core values, and that's not untrue. That is that's in essence what I'm doing today by sharing some of these concepts. But as I matured as an advisor, as an entrepreneur within the helper service community, I recognize the value in having a third party actually pay attention and give honest feedback of what's actually happening. If someone's listening to this and is thinking, man, I know what I stand for, what we stand for, write it down, pull over to the side of the road, scribble it, and bring it to your team and listen to them. I mean, they'll help you edit it. They'll help you edit it. Ask your customers. They'll help you edit it. It's like we could have 100 companies and they're all coming with their core values, and they all they might be different interpretations of the similar themes, but the process of actually paying attention and attempting to figure them out, I think, is more valuable than step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll save that for the book. The process of attempting to figure out what they are and why they matter and who we are and where we're going and including our people is what makes business meaningful and fun. So and this is the kicker here. It's not an either or. It's not an either or. It's where each listener is in their hero's journey. Put on your bootstraps, get locked back in, and go meet with some customers and ask the tough questions. Call on them. Spend some time with the team. Be inspired. Write them down. Share them with the team. Ask for feedback. Edit it together. If you want to bring in a third party, I guess, once again, you're a good example. If you did it once and it was helpful, well, it doesn't mean that's just part of the journey. Now you're at the next level, looking for the next, it's a never ending ladder and staircase of learning and unlearning in business. That's part of the responsibility of people at the top of the organization. It's a never ending ladder of learning through unlearning and reinterpreting and reimagining. Because one of my regular guests on the Culture Matters podcast, I consider him an advisor, and I love talking to him. Alec Arena Securities, just a brilliant investor. He always says, like, hey, what is a business? It's people showing up to a building. It's people showing up to a build or showing up to something and making it meaningful. They're showing up to a job that they either know or don't know. They know how to do or don't know how to do at various levels, but they're showing up to something that they're a part of to serve their own best interests. And so my push to everyone would be, your conscious knows what you should be doing right now. Your partners know what you should be doing right now. Your life partners know what you should be doing right now. The people that are really close in your life, that are real close, know what you should be doing. You might even be paying people to tell you what you should be doing. Now, it's like, are you paying them to tell you what you want them to acknowledge that you think you should be doing, or want to think that you should be doing? Or are you paying them to push you into, to confront what you think, or challenge what you think you should be doing?
Most of you have heard me talk about Moversville and the power of their email marketing service that has helped us increase leads by over 112% over the last year. But have you heard of Moversville Connect? Moversville Connect is an incredible resource for all things moving. They feature an array of vendors and services and lists like insurance providers, softwares, equipment suppliers, marketing sources, and much, much more. The best part? This resource is free. Go check out Moversville Connect today by going to moversville.com and clicking Connect. That's moversville.com and click Connect and discover the world of Moversville beyond email.
It's a simple, or here's something tactical. Let's say you have, you said own it. Here's a question I would have for you. Own it. tactically, what does that mean? So like, where's the meaning going to come from? Well, implicitly, it's going to come from people observing you own it. You're going to own it in like 20 different contexts. Example, there's 5 missed calls while we're doing this show, and you immediately call those 5 people. What's going on? That's owning it versus I need to take an hour cold shower after this, and I'll own it after that. But like, what's own it mean? Like in a sentence, within our So my question to you would be, if own it had a sentence that followed it, that like clarified its meaning. I'm new in the business. What's a fundamental truth that, or I'm new, I'm in the industry, and when I think about owning it, this is like a fundamental piece. I'm like someone that's on site. I'm on site. I'm relating to customers. How do I own it in something that's very practical? That anecdotally you see is always there's something that's going to go wrong. There's some type of conflict that's going to arise. There's something unexpected. There's something expectedly unexpected that will happen when a mover is on site that will push them to own it. What's an example? What's something that could go wrong on site during a move?
Yeah, I think you drop something and you break it, or you bump into a wall. I think it's don't make excuses. Take ownership. Don't point fingers at other people. If you mess up, own up to your mistakes and take responsibility for it.
So like that sentence gives me, if that's articulated, that gives some oomph behind own it. Now, this is the thing. Am I going to be expected to memorize that coming into work? Well, that would be a bit culty. This is the thing. If it's clear like that, and the person that is in the lead, that is teaching with their words and their actions and their overall respect that they have built up with the team, if they know, like if it's clear and they know it and they talk about it and they can teach from it, people tend to learn. Like that's part of the learning process. It's a heuristic. It's like a psychological tool to help create, let's say, influence behavior, to influence it in a positive way. It's like that's part of the value of values. Is a value could lump all this information into one word and one sentence. Like the sentence that you just said could have a whole book of power behind it. And that one word, own it. Everyone knows what own it means. They believe it because they see the people superior to them owning it. This is where the values become total malarkey. Rules for thee and not for me. This goes back to the question like about in the beginning where I mentioned Kim Jong, the dictator, essentially. It's like, who gets to decide what the culture is? Yeah, like it depends who you ask. What kind of culture do you want? Some people on this episode that they're listening to this, they might want a culture where they have no responsibility. They want a culture where they're entitled to all of the profits with the least amount of sacrifice. And guess what? They get to decide that if they own the business. Now, I can make an argument that someday their top lieutenant will try to kill them. That's my argument. However, I'm only right when it doesn't matter to them anymore because they're dead. That's a paradox. They have to believe me. But somebody that's living that truth is not going to want to listen to me. They've lied to themselves for too long to actually take that feedback. So that's something, pay very close attention to. You do, like, I don't get to dictate. This is something I had to learn in my career, to my own arrogance. I do not get to dictate what the culture is. I am there to give feedback of what is happening and observe and explore with the people that architect it, which is leadership and the people. It's everybody. It's not, that would be bad. It's not, to come, but there's unconscious bias in everything, right? I'm born in the West. There's a certain way that we show up, whether we realize it or not, that fits into our system. But the people that are listening to this, they get to decide their culture. I think it's when what we want our culture to be and what our culture isn't, they're misaligned. that's where it creates a lot of pain and suffering for everybody. But there are people that are listening to this that, they're thinking, wait, no, I want to figure out how to do the least amount of, by the way, I'll finish my thought, the least amount of work, the most amount of gain. Now, of course, that's the founder mindset in some sense. Why would we leave wherever we were to go go on this journey of pain and suffering? But the interesting irony in that is that the person that starts it, they don't have a choice. They have to work because they don't have resources. They don't have reputation. Their vision isn't known to anyone but them. So they end up working harder and longer and suffering more than everybody. So the impulse that drives it isn't necessarily what sustains them or what keeps them going. But once it becomes an enterprise, they have to basically they have to change. They have to metamorphosize into some new form. And that part is kind of what the value of this conversation is. It's like, where is each person that's listening to this in on that journey? But no, Evil Jay in another universe. Well, I guess I shouldn't say Evil Jay because I don't know if this is Evil Jay or that's Evil Jay. But let's say that this is Good Jay, and Evil Jay in another podcast is trying to teach how to engineer the culture so that all the pain and suffering goes on the employees. And the shareholder gets all of the reward. That could be a podcast too. Like, what are the variables? How do we get people to give everything they possibly can and get the least amount possible? Well, that would be based on the stories that we tell. That would be based on the symbolism that we use to attach meaning. That would be based on the words that we use and what they mean. That would be based on how exciting those gatherings are. That's why I became interested in the leadership, because when the leadership, how the leadership sacrifices influences the context of the culture. How the leadership, sacrifices.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I mean, you seem to think that the owner of the company, I mean, they should be present within the company. But you hear a lot of people talk about, like, this idealism for somebody to go into business so that they can create, the systems and processes and buy back their time. I don't know if you've read the 4-Hour Work Week, but that's a big premise within that book. And I read it early on in my business, but I started to realize that, it was teaching me to try to become an absentee owner and to be able to delegate just about every single task. And there's other people that write books on time management that, talk a lot about that, but it's counterintuitive to, I think, some of the values that you're presenting, and that the owner should be there. But sometimes, the bigger you get, the you have to be able to delegate leadership, and you have to be able to, you can't go out to every single move all over the country or even in your own town once you get to a certain level and visit with, every customer and talk to every customer and every employee. I mean, there's companies that have tens of thousands of employees. I mean, Amazon, for example, and I mean, Jeff Bezos can't physically know every single employee and every single person who buys something off of Amazon. And, you hear a lot about culture with Chick-fil-A. And they've been one of the fastest growing food places, one of the most profitable, fast food restaurants. It's not because their food is exceptionally healthy. It is tasty to most people, I think, but there's better food out there that exists that never grow, fraction of the size of Chick-fil-A. But I remember hearing that the owner, Kathy Truitt, or the founder, I should say, I think his kids are kind of taking it over now, but he would go into the office and he would pick up trash from the parking lot or go and clean the bathrooms himself. And I feel like that's had a direct relationship to the growth. But I mean, Southwest Airlines, another one that's been known for culture, Disney, another one. But, you get to this place where you get too big and you can't possibly be at every location or every site and talk to every single person. I mean, tell me, like, how do you navigate that paradox? It's like a growth paradox, which is the title of another great book that was written by a moving industry owner that has a huge moving company.
I'd
that
love
I
to read
recently
that.
interviewed. Yeah. She's got a $40 million company with, locations in every major city in Texas. over 100 trucks. And I mean, in the beginning, yeah, the owner can absolutely be there every day and have their hand in every pot. But in order to truly grow, you can't. You have to be able to manage your time and delegate to get once you get to a certain level if you want to keep going. But how do you handle that paradox?
This is where the values come in, because the context of the role can change, but our the core in values, the core values means that the human being is modeling the values in whatever context they're in, whatever whatever descriptive words would be used to articulate that woman's new job to that company, where she's going to be modeling the core values. And I would, in a very Petersonian sense, like this idea of sacrifice, like I could be doing other things, especially now that I have all of the power, the attention, the influence, but I'm going to do something for you. That's at like the base of the system, something for you, the customer, something for you, the employee. So the essence of our conversation is the answer to that question. It might take a couple times to listen to and like unpack for each listener on their own, but it's the values transcend the role. What's the new role where I'm sacrificing? If someday there's a board, how am I modeling the values to the people that are stewarding at each level below me? So like case study. Every year I go to the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting. In 1965, Warren Buffett bought shares. He bought shares in a textile mill, Berkshire Hathaway, or around that time, maybe right before that. He ended up taking it over, and that business would become a holding company that owned dozens and dozens of private companies, many, many, many public stocks. And I was at the meeting this year when he stepped down from CEO and chairman. He actually stepped down. He was actively working from the 65 till he was modeling the values for all those years. And he could have continued. This is to your paradox point. He could have continued. He actually stepped down before, like we didn't kick him out. The shareholders didn't kick him out of the building. He stepped down. His stepping down was a modeling of the values of responsibility, even though he could have kept doing the job, because he wasn't who he once was. Like in his estimation, I'm not fit to be a steward of this job description anymore. Now he's moved into like just spiritual, the it's like he's not on the board. There's now his son Howard is there to steward his core values. This is how Warren would have done it. And for years they've been preparing the CEOs of Greg Abel and on the business side and Ajit Jain on the insurance to steward that business. I want to stress that case study because he went to work every day. He went to work and he did his job. He read financials. He thought. He talked to CEOs that called him. Like he had a job. He strategized. He showed up every year to the annual gathering, his Titan retreat, and he answered questions from his team, his investment partners, his shareholders, and he told the story and what he didn't say and what he did say, and that he showed up and so on. And so at his in the 90s, it was time for him to say, I could keep doing this. Everyone is still kind of okay with that, but I'm actually going to prove the values by walking away. I would say that's more of a biological, beat. And then he showed like it was what Caesar didn't do. He had to get taken out, So my answer would be that's one case study. the values. So what's the context that people are actually modeling them? If I get a new job description, the people that are closest to me they'll know if I'm modeling those values or not. They'll respect, they'll trust me based on how I show up, and there'll be respect for me. And there's less resentment that'll creep in. And the likelihood is, if they're the right people, they'll model the values in whatever that is, and whatever their job description is, it'll be modeled down and modeled down and modeled down. Now, this is the thing. I said the right people. They may not be. There is a degree of black swan. Taleb, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, wrote this book, The Black Swan. It was like a five books in one set. It was like the Incerto. I haven't read all of them. The Black Swan, but they're highly acclaimed, like random probabilities, random events. You do the best possible job. It's not the right person. There's a right. The exponentials aren't there. We're not going to hit the J curve. You go out of the system, you're modeling the values the best you can. And that next person isn't breaking out. They're not contradicting the values because of you. They're doing it because of some other stimulus. There have been philosophers who try to figure that out since forever. That brings us back to earlier in the conversation about how I said how we relate to that inevitability will reveal the values of the culture, of the company, of the society. Dr. Peterson, in his third book, there's a series, if anyone's interested, on the Culture Matters podcast, from like episode 907 to like 907 or 911 to the mid 920s, where I go through each rule, having studied it like a lecture. But in Rule 4, because it's a helpful book on many levels. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. And he gives an example of an old myth, like thousands of years old. I think it's an Egyptian myth of the pharaoh Osiris, who stopped paying attention. Now, in this story, he's to blame, because when he stopped paying attention to his castle, his evil brother Seth rose up and killed him. That represents malevolence. Seth wanted what Osiris got without doing the work. He just wanted the outcome. Come on, we see this in business. Oh, that person, they want the outcome without doing the work. Osiris wasn't paying attention. Deeper dive, you could say, maybe psychologically, it's kin. Oh, there's an entitlement in love. I'm not going to say anything. I'll wait till tomorrow. And then he's dead. On the other side of things, so that's one story where it talks about how the leader, if they stop paying attention, they're sowing the seeds for contempt, for someone to take the throne, to undermine the culture. Okay? That's an example in Osiris and Seth's relationship in that story. Anyone interested, just go to Rule 4, buy the book. It's a wonderful book. I don't get anything for it. I was just excited about it. Where the leader stops living the values, right? But then if you look at all of these biblical texts, there's plenty of stories where the leader is exactly living the values, but one of the people closest to them betrays them. I know I went all the way over here. Both are possible, and both likely inevitable in business, in life. How we relate to those conflicts reveals our values, our value system, our core beliefs, the stories that we live our lives by. And to answer the business question, it's like, well, whatever their role is, how the values by which, how they relate to their responsibilities influences the people closer to them that will carry them on. It will create the invisible scale. This is where it becomes like this maybe how people like live their lives can influence the culture in ways that create self-destruction. Like how they actually live their lives. because everything that the leadership does or doesn't do influences the people close to them and what they model and what they want or what they think they want. It all influences. Something I would like to say that might be helpful for like the listeners from a tactile standpoint is the discrepancy between responsibility and accountability. Responsibility is modeled in behavior, the ability to respond. It's something that's seen, it's experienced. And you're right, as it grows, the company, it becomes, if they can't see you and they're not experiencing you, how do they model your behavior? That's where the accountability comes in. The accountability is a symptom of the ability to respond. That's that invisible threads are the strongest ties. The accountability is given in speech or taken in action. Can people tell the truth? Can they say what they think? What are the consequences? Taken in action. People will leave the culture. That will teach us something. Are they leaving in droves? Why are they leaving? Are they quiet quitting? Did we avoid it so to the point where they become an enemy within the walls of the castle gates? Accountability is given in speech and taken in action. You talk and act. It's a symptom of responsibility. So the no matter what, it's an interesting. I mean, this is like we're getting on the edge here. This is like we're on the edge. You have you have Peterson in one sense saying, Osiris, he stopped paying attention and he birthed Seth. On the other side, you have I think it's McGilchrist, who was on the show. He's this polymath. He was saying how coincidentia oppositorum. It's like the good needs the bad. You need the opposite. It's the opposite that actually, like on the other side of it, things you could say that was Seth necessarily the bad if Osiris stopped paying attention? What if Seth was like the founding fathers? This is something I'd like to ask Peterson. What if Seth actually represents the founding fathers and that it was the British that, stopped paying attention to the colonies? And so that spirit of revolution lives within the system. Sorry, I'm totally digressing. But This whole show is about the answer to that question. It's the values are what actually happens in real time. So here's something that's practical to the people that are listening. It has to be. Don't start something you're not willing to finish. Don't start your business if you're not willing to work. Be careful of who's selling you what. I could tell you what my bias is. I want you to work. I want you to work with your business because I like business. I like the work. I enjoy the building and the creativity. And my, my bias is if you're not working and your company's not more successful, we can't get paid. So I want you to work in and with and through your business. That's my bias. That's what I like. Somebody else might be benefiting what feeds their soul. Somebody else you're listening to on another podcast. They don't want you to work. They want you to retire or they want you to sell. And that's what lights them up. It's you that has to decide. No one can walk the path of life but you, for you. Each of the listeners has to decide. Are they like Wade? They want to build something generational? Or that's how it feels. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Or are they like, no, I would like to be done yesterday and I've really thought it through. And who will take it? Or maybe you just need a vacation. But what I'm saying, my bias is I think it would be it's fun to do it, to commit to it. Oh, and so every argument I'm making is in the spirit of there will be benefit to you stewarding your business. And I guess one of the questions is can you steward the business far, far away? Well, inevitably, yes, you will. And the leaders that continue that chain of value, they're going to go all in and be all in at every level of the hierarchy, of every level, relative to how much trust they have in you, how much respect they have in you. And if they lose that trust and they lose that respect, it'll start flying away. Now, this is it's inevitable that that'll happen because there are uncertainties. There's like, that's kind of those old stories teach us. The betrayer is inevitable. It's inevitable. If I'm engaged in my business at whatever level, maybe I just have a crazy network. I'm out and pick up the phone. Jay, I need, a whole C-suite team. Great. Let me call this person because I know somebody that knows that that's what they do. So, all right, I'll call them. Yeah, man, I did everything right, but I spent a little bit too long on the yacht. Just a little bit. I wasn't picking up the calls. I wasn't accessible. I wasn't, I thought I was paying attention, but I wasn't. Or, I gave them everything and they wanted more. Well, they did want more. And like, you were never going to change that. So it went as far as it could.
And they created more and the culture shifted at that point.
There's a beautiful quote in the beginning, as if I haven't talked enough. I apologize. Churchill said, "Don't interrupt me while I'm interrupting. It's embarrassing." You just... In the beginning of Maps of Me, I have it right here, actually. Maps of Me, it's a great book. It's a textbook. It took like 15 years for Peterson to write. It said the opening paragraph of it is just one of the most profound quotes to me. It summarizes the whole book. And it says, something we do not understand protects us. Something we cannot see. It'd be nice if I knew the quote. Something we cannot see protects us from something we do not understand. So something we cannot see protects us from something we do not understand. The thing we cannot see is culture. It uses some other big words that I'll leave out because it's a little, but the thing we cannot see is culture. If the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. We will do anything to defend ourselves against that return. I think in a business sense, when the leadership is not felt, whether it's absenteeism, whether it's someone that's disrupting it because they want what Osiris has, if the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. People stop believing. The values aren't transferred to the customer. The customers aren't buying again. That will eventually show up on the balance sheet. Distressed cultures become distressed assets. We will do anything to defend ourselves against that return. The people will rise up and try to do a mutiny. People will leave the company and start their own. The customers will stop using that service and go somewhere else. The partners will, a lot of things I interact, I do a lot of conflict resolution with partnerships and so on. Mm-hmm. The partners will go against each other. Two biggest things that destroy small, medium-sized enterprises: partnership breakups and divorces. But I'll digress. That quote there at the begining of I could go on. You have 2 more hours.
That's
right?
a good one to end it on. We are running out of time here, but that I think you hit the nail right on the head. If the void will always be filled, and if you're not setting that direction, then chaos will fill that void, and that'll become the culture that you're in. I think that's a good takeaway. Jay, how can people get a hold of you? We are just out of time here. But if you have the Culture Matters podcast. So when people, you've got about almost 1,000 episodes there to go really deep into these topics. But is there another way that people can connect with you if they want to work with Culture Matters to help their own businesses, help to improve their own cultures, or connect with you on social media? What's the best way to get in touch?
Please subscribe to the Culture Matters podcast. Please listen to episode 967, Wade Sweikel. We release one every day. We'll be at 1,000 in less than a month. Please reach out to me on Instagram, Jay Doran _ the Culture Man. If you want to have a conversation around company culture, I would be more than willing to talk with you. It would be an honor. If you've listened to this entire episode, we should be friends more than even just doing business together. Jeez. Wade, thanks so much. Yes, and if you have any speaking engagements that you're listening to this, clearly, if you've watched this, you could see that I'm I'm starting to speak again. I'm learning how to crawl before I walk before I run, and dance before I fly, or move before I move. I would love the opportunity to speak on company culture, leadership, business, for anyone listening to this. So just reach out to me, Jay Doran _ the Culture Man. Subscribe to the Culture Matters podcast, and I think that would be helpful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. You are a very passionate person about what you do, Jay, and I respect that. The fact that, you drop a podcast every single day, you've clearly not finished what you started with that, and you're still going, because a lot of podcasts don't even make it past episode 11. I think there's a stat that the majority don't. So I appreciate everything you're doing and for coming on and taking the time out of your day to teach us about culture and how it can so strongly impact not only our moving businesses, but our lives and the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of other people, and even at as high as government levels. It goes all the way up on different macro scales. So thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Grow Your Moving Company podcast, and we will see you next time. And this was Mr. Jay Doran of Culture Matters. I want to give a huge thank you to the team over at Hire for helping me produce this podcast. Now, Hire is formally known as Hey Lou, and it's run by moving company owners, and it's a VA placement agency that can do all kinds of things, from video and content editing, social media, administrative work, KPIs. Heck, at Two College Brothers, we even use them as moving consultants because they speak perfect English. Sometimes they're in different time zones. A lot of them are located in Central and South America or all over the world, and they work hard. So if you're looking to find your next A+ rockstar talent team member, then go check out Hire at hireup.com, spelled HYREUP.com, and tell them I sent you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Grow Your Moving Company podcast. If you'd like to learn more about any of the sponsors listed on this show, want to apply for the next Moving Titan retreat, or interested in owning or working for a Two College Brothers franchise, drop me a line at wade@twocollegebrothers.com. Moving out. Have a great day.